Don't you make promises you can't keep. That single line, spoken with the weight of a lifetime, cut deeper than any lecture, any scolding, any argument. Because when a grandfather says it, it's not just advice, it's a warning, a plea, and maybe even a prophecy. And what followed that warning wasn't just a family conversation, it was the spark that revealed fears, stubbornness, and a truth no one wanted to say out loud. Grandparents don't usually spill their hearts like this, but when he looked at Lou, he couldn't hold back. The words tumbled out, raw and unpolished. He admitted that Amy reminded him so much of her mom, and Lou, well, she reminded him of himself. Independent, headstrong, stubborn to the bone. That kind of independence was both a gift and a curse. He could already picture her flying off to New York or Denver or maybe even Toronto, building a life somewhere far from home, never looking back. And that thought terrified him. Because what happens when the family you've built, the roots you've planted, start drifting away like leaves in the wind? But then came Peter, the man in Lou's life. "It's not that I don't approve," Grandpa said carefully, his voice low, steady, almost rehearsed. "It's just, I don't want him to take you away." The words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. Was it really about Peter, or was it about losing control, losing the bond, losing her? Lou tried to reassure him, promising that no one was taking her anywhere. But that's when the hammer fell. Don't make promises you can't keep. Not once, but twice. A sentence repeated like a curse, like an echo that Lou couldn't escape. And here's where it cuts deepest. Promises feel strong in the moment, unbreakable, unshakable, like stone. But when life pulls you in unexpected directions, those same promises crack like glass. Grandpa knew it. He had seen it before. He had lived it. Lou didn't want to admit it, but deep down, she knew he might be right. That's the sting of family warnings. They sound harsh, but they're laced with a truth we don't want to face. The tension grew thicker. Lou's stubbornness clashed with his fear, creating a silence that spoke louder than the words themselves. And then came the twist, the moment that left everything hanging. Lou turned, her voice softer, almost reluctant, and asked the question no one saw coming. "Grandpa, can I get a ride to the airport?" A ride to the airport. Simple words, right? But not when they're coming right after a promise that no one's leaving. The contradiction hit Grandpa like a punch to the chest. Moments ago, Lou swore she wasn't going anywhere, that no one was taking her away. And now? Now she wanted a lift to the very place where people disappear, where loved ones board planes and sometimes never come back. Airports aren't just travel hubs, they're crossroads. They're the places where families fracture, where goodbyes turn permanent, where people say, "It's just a trip." But deep down, everyone knows some trips change everything. So what was Lou really saying here? Was it just a casual request? Or was she testing the limits of his warning? Grandpa's face didn't give much away, but inside the gears were grinding. Had he already lost her? Was this the start of the unraveling? You could almost hear the old man's heart whispering, "This is exactly what I was afraid of." And Lou, she probably thought she was being clever, that she could soothe him with soft promises and stubborn smiles. But words don't erase fear. They never do. Especially when that fear is rooted in experience, in years of watching loved ones promise one thing and then vanish with another. He had seen it happen with her mother, with friends, with people who swore they'd never leave. And they did. Every single time. But let's not forget, this isn't just about airports or plane tickets. This is about control, about identity, about the tug of war between generations. Lou is stubborn because Grandpa was stubborn. She's independent because he once was too. And when two mirrors face each other, what do you see? Infinite reflections, stretching into eternity, each one slightly more distorted than the last. That's what their relationship felt like in this moment. Two versions of the same soul clashing, neither willing to blink first. Grandpa couldn't let her go, because in his mind, letting her go meant losing her forever. And Lou? She couldn't stay shackled, because to her, staying meant betraying herself. And then there's Peter. Poor Peter, stuck in the middle of this generational tug-of-war without even realizing it. Was Grandpa really worried about Peter, or was he just using Peter as the excuse, the scapegoat, the shield to hide his deeper fear? Because it's easier to say, I don't want him to take you away, than to admit, I don't want to lose you. That's the ugly truth no one says out loud, and maybe Lou knew it, maybe she didn't. But her promise, no one is taking me away, I promise, felt flimsy now, especially when the word airport slid off her tongue so casually. Think about it. How many times in your life have you promised something you couldn't deliver? I'll never leave you. I'll always be there. Nothing will change. And yet, everything changes. Life drags us down different roads, whether we like it or not. Promises don't keep people together. Choices do. Actions do. And Lou's choice in this moment, whether innocent or not, cracked the foundation of her grandfather's faith in her words. Because when she asked for that ride, it wasn't just a request. It was the confirmation of his greatest fear. The room might have stayed quiet after that, but silence is never empty. Silence is loud. Silence says everything you don't want to admit. And in that silence, one question echoed in Grandpa's mind, louder than any voice could say. Was this ride just to the airport, or was it the beginning of goodbye? The airport. 3 syllables that can shatter a family's calm. You see, when Lou tossed that word into the air, it wasn't just geography. It was prophecy. For Grandpa, it meant destiny, fate, inevitability. He knew airports don't just take people places. They take people away. And the irony? She had just sworn she wasn't going anywhere, that no one was taking her away. Yet here she was, ready to buckle herself into a plane seat, soar above the clouds, and test the strength of a promise that was already cracking. Doesn't that sting? Doesn't that sound exactly like every time someone swore, I'll never leave, right before packing their bags? Grandpa wasn't naive. He had seen this pattern play out too many times before. Promises in the heat of the moment mean nothing when the pull of independence calls louder. He'd lived long enough to recognize the look in Lou's eyes, the look of someone who already had one foot out the door, even if her body was still in the room. She thought she was being practical, even casual. Just give me a ride. But what she didn't realize was that to him, it was a dagger hidden in the folds of her words. Casual requests often reveal the deepest intentions. And Grandpa, stubborn as he was, caught the undertone immediately. This wasn't just a ride. This was the beginning of distance. And let's pause for a second. What's more heartbreaking than being replaced by a promise someone can't keep? Lou wasn't trying to hurt him. That's the tragic part. She wasn't cruel, but promises, no matter how soft and loving they sound, are often selfish. People promise not to hurt others when what they really mean is, I want to keep you calm for now. And Grandpa, wise to the tricks of time, knew exactly that. He had once been that young, making promises he couldn't keep, trying to smooth things over with words. Now he was on the other side of the game, watching history replay with frightening precision. Think of the layers here. Grandpa wasn't just battling Lou, he was battling ghosts. Ghosts of a past where he lost people he loved to big cities, to bigger dreams, to flights that left and never circled back. Ghosts of a wife, of children, of friends who said, I'll come back soon, but never did. Lou's words triggered every scar, every abandonment, every goodbye that felt permanent. And in that moment, his heart was louder than logic. Logic said, it's just a ride. But his heart screamed, this is the end of everything. And here's the twist. Lou probably believed her own promise. That's the dangerous beauty of it. She meant it when she said no one was taking her away. She believed she could control destiny with sincerity. But sincerity doesn't stand a chance against time. Believing your own promises is what makes them even more tragic when they crumble. Grandpa knew that, and it broke him to hear her innocence collide with his wisdom. She couldn't see the storm yet, but he could. He always could. And what about Peter in all this? The man didn't even need to be in the room to haunt the conversation. His shadow stretched long, because for Grandpa, Peter wasn't just the guy. He was the symbol of change, of uprooting, of Lou becoming someone else, somewhere else. Grandpa's suspicion wasn't about Peter's character. It was about his existence. To him, Peter was the living embodiment of the airport ticket, the one-way trip, the door Lou would eventually walk through and never return. Isn't that how fear works? It attaches itself to someone, anyone, and suddenly the problem isn't the fear itself, it's the person who represents it. But let's not pretend Lou didn't notice. She might not have said it out loud, but she felt the weight in his voice, the strain behind his words, the warning disguised as advice. Don't make promises you can't keep. That wasn't just a caution, it was a prophecy. And when he repeated it, slower this time, firmer, it wasn't for her, it was for himself. A shield. A way of saying, I'm bracing myself for the heartbreak that's coming. And here's the gut punch. He might have been right. Because isn't it true that the people who swear they'll stay are often the first to leave? And doesn't life always prove that the warnings we shrug off are the ones that echo the loudest when it's too late? So here we are, Grandpa, Lou, Peter, promises, airports, ghosts of the past. And one question burning hotter than all the rest. Was this really just about a ride? Or was it the start of Lou's final departure? Airports don't lie. They are truth-tellers wrapped in shiny terminals and blinking departure boards. You walk in with promises, with reassurances, with, don't worry, I'll be back soon. But you walk out with distance, with absence, with echoes of footsteps fading into memory. And that's exactly why Grandpa froze when Lou dropped the word airport. He had lived too long to pretend it was harmless. He knew that once you put someone in that building, under those fluorescent lights, you gamble with whether they'll ever really return. Lou might have thought this was just about convenience, just about logistics. Give me a ride, Grandpa. What's the big deal? But to him, it was betrayal in slow motion. Not the loud kind of betrayal you scream about, but the quiet kind that sits heavy in your chest and keeps you awake at night. And that's where the warning mattered most. Don't make promises you can't keep. Do you hear the weight in that? It wasn't just a scolding, it was a plea from a man who had seen enough broken vows to know that every promise has an expiration date. He wasn't accusing Lou of lying, he was accusing time of stealing, because time always does. Lou promised him she wasn't leaving, but time, ambition, independence, those are stronger forces than affection, stronger than words. Grandpa knew it. Lou didn't. And that gap between knowledge and naivety, that's where heartbreak grows. But here's the cruel twist. Promises are addictive. We cling to them even when we know they'll break. Why? Because the lie is softer than the truth. Grandpa wanted to believe her, even as his gut screamed otherwise. He wanted to hold on to her words like a life raft, even as he watched the waters rising. And Lou, maybe she wanted to believe herself too. Maybe she thought saying it out loud made it real. But words aren't reality. They're just shadows of intent, fragile and fleeting. And Grandpa, battle-scarred from decades of watching shadows fade, couldn't unhear the truth hidden behind her request. Think about the irony here. Grandpa wasn't angry that Lou wanted a ride. He was devastated that she asked him, of all people. The one man terrified of losing her was now supposed to deliver her straight to the gates of departure. Can you imagine the sting? To be the driver of your own heartbreak? To have your hands on the wheel, steering the very path that might take someone away from you forever? That's not just cruel, it's cosmic irony. And Lou, in her innocence, might never have seen it. But Grandpa? He saw every inch of it, every shadow, every possibility. And maybe, just maybe, that's why his words sounded so final. Don't make promises you can't keep. He repeated it like a mantra, like a curse, like a line he needed carved into the walls of her memory. Because once she left, once the distance stretched too far, he wanted her to remember that he knew. He knew her promise wouldn't last. And when she broke it, he wouldn't be surprised, just shattered. Now pause and ask yourself, was Lou really planning on staying? Or was she already gone in her heart, and the airport was just the first step toward admitting it? Promises are easy when you're standing still. But when the engines roar, when the boarding call echoes, when the plane lifts off, can even the strongest promise survive gravity? That's the cliff they stood on together. Grandpa clinging to a warning, Lou clinging to a promise, and the airport waiting like a silent judge, ready to expose which one was true. And the only question left is the one no one dared to ask out loud. Was this ride to the airport the beginning of forever distance? Or was it the last fragile thread holding them together before everything unraveled?